world's most infamous serial killer might have remained undetected if he had been adept at using a computer. It's astonishing to imagine that someone engaging in serial killings could also be a close friend of their victims, a well-known figure in the community, and a doctor. This is the chilling account of Dr. Harold Shipman, who turned his clinic into a place where lives were taken instead of saved. For 23 years, he resided in Hyde, a small town in England with a population of just 30,000. Despite being responsible for more than 250 murders, Dr. Shipman remained unsuspected until he made a minor mistake that ultimately led to his downfall. What allowed him to evade capture for so long, and what evidence led the police to uncover the years-long chain of murders? This is the gripping tale of Dr. Harold Shipman. Shipman primarily targeted elderly patients who lived alone and whose deaths wouldn't raise suspicion. He dedicated time to these patients, visiting their homes and listening to their concerns to ease their loneliness. He even gained so much of their trust that some patients gave him the keys to their homes. Due to his kind demeanor, he became widely admired in Hyde, where people believed he had a special bond with elderly patients. However, behind this facade, Shipman used the information he gathered about his patients, such as their schedules, financial status, and family connections, for sinister purposes. When he felt the time was right, Shipman would kill his victims by administering lethal doses of medication. Given that most of these patients were over 80 years old, their deaths were often assumed to be natural. For years, no one suspected him, and his actions continued undeterred. Shipman began his medical career in a town called Pontefract, about 70 kilometers from Hyde, where he worked in a hospital. In 1974, he moved to Todmorden and became a general practitioner at the Abraham Ormerod Medical Center. During his time there, he started prescribing pethidine, a powerful painkiller in excessive amounts to certain patients. While the drug was meant for medical use, its addictive properties made it appealing. Shipman, addicted to pethidine himself, often prescribed it unnecessarily to patients who didn't need it. The drug made patients feel good, even though they were unknowingly under its influence. As a result, many patients grew attached to him. However, once his addiction was discovered, the hospital dismissed him and his license was nearly revoked. However, Shipman managed to avoid losing his medical license and briefly attended rehab. After his departure from Todmorden, he resurfaced in Hyde in 1977, joining the Donnybrook Medical Center as a general practitioner. Shipman continued his practice at Donnybrook until 1993, when he opened his own clinic in Hyde. Over time, he became a respected and well-known doctor in the city. However, his murders increased significantly after gaining autonomy in his practice. For years, no one suspected Shipman's true intentions until March 1998, when Dr. Linda Reynolds, who worked at the Brooks Surgery Clinic opposite Shipman's, raised concerns. She noticed that, within 3 months, 16 of Shipman's patients had died, a number significantly higher than the 14 deaths recorded at Brooks Surgery during the same period, even though her clinic had 3 times the patient load. This suspicion deepened when it was revealed that most of Shipman's deceased patients had been cremated. In the area, Christians typically opted for burial, making this trend unusual. Dr. Reynolds expressed her concerns in a report to Manchester's coroner, noting that many of Shipman's patients were elderly women who were found dead at home. Strangely, their deaths often occurred shortly after a visit from Shipman. However, the initial investigation by the police yielded no substantial evidence, leading to its closure within a month. Shipman continued his killings, forging death certificates to mask his crimes. He made sure to list old age as the cause of death and frequently recommended cremation, which prevented further scrutiny. This allowed many of his murders to go unnoticed for years. Shipman's last victim was Kathleen Grundy, an 81-year-old former mayor of Hyde, who died at home on June 24, 1998. Shipman was the last person to see her alive and later signed her death certificate, attributing her passing to old age. However, Grundy's daughter, Angela Woodruff, who was a lawyer, grew suspicious when she discovered a peculiar will leaving her mother's estate to Shipman. While the will's content alone wasn't entirely incriminating, Angela was particularly alarmed by the omission of one of her mother's properties. This indicated that the will was likely forged by someone unfamiliar with her full estate, most likely Shipman. Angela reported her suspicions to the police, sparking a new investigation. Kathleen Grundy's body was exhumed, and toxicology reports revealed high levels of diamorphine, heroin, in her system. During the investigation, it was discovered that Shipman had begun recording patient details in a computerized medical journal. However, he was unaware that the computer automatically saved the date of the last edit. Investigators found that Shipman had backdated entries to make it seem as though Kathleen was a drug addict. Additionally, the police uncovered the typewriter Shipman used to forge the will, with unique mechanical flaws that matched the document. On September 7, 1998, the police arrested Dr. Harold Shipman, exposing his horrifying crimes. Further investigations revealed that Shipman often administered fatal doses of diamorphine, falsified death certificates, and persuaded families to cremate their loved ones. These patterns emerged across hundreds of cases, ultimately confirming that he had murdered at least 218 patients. However, due to a lack of evidence in some cases, experts estimate the actual number of victims could be as high as 260. In January 2000, Shipman was convicted of 15 murders and sentenced to life imprisonment. While in prison, he claimed to a fellow inmate that his victim count exceeded 500, although this claim remains unverified. Shipman died by suicide in 2004, leaving many questions unanswered. Some believe his crimes were financially motivated, while others think they stem from psychological trauma related to his mother's death. She had been treated with morphine for cancer, leading some to speculate that Shipman's obsession with administering morphine might have been linked to her influence. The horrifying legacy of Dr. Harold Shipman remains one of the darkest chapters in medical history.